All right, we are live and on the air. Welcome to another episode of Student Success Stories featured by Maxwell Prep TV. This is my first interview, y'all, where I'm actually talking to somebody I know. So I think this is going to be a little bit of a different dynamic. I'm really excited to introduce you guys to my friend and somebody that I'm going to be living with, like in the same suite this upcoming school year. She's Kaitlyn. She is going to introduce herself, but I know that you guys are going to have so much wisdom to learn from her. So it's going to be really exciting to talk to her. And again, this is somebody that I hold near and dear to my heart. Kaitlyn, I'm going to toss the floor over to you. Tell us where you go to school, what year you are, what you're studying, where you're from, and three kind of descriptors you would use to talk about yourself or to describe yourself, three kind of adjectives.
Hey Mackenzie. So yeah, my name's Kaitlyn. I am a rising senior at Duke. Like Mackenzie mentioned, we're living together next year. I'm double majoring in biology and global health. I'm originally from New Jersey, a very small town in New Jersey. And three descriptors I would use for myself is introverted, very much so, nerdy, and maybe pensive. I think, yeah.
I think I would agree with all three of those. But okay, so Kaitlyn, let's jump in a little bit about and I want you to talk as though I don't know this information, even though I do, but describe for listeners kind of your family background. Talk about, having family from Jamaica and, being raised by your mom and how you feel like that has really played into your values for education and also just in the way that you live your life and in your pursuit of higher education and academics and a career and all of that.
Yeah, so I am first gen American. Not first gen college. My both my parents went to college. And my mom immigrated here when she was in her early 20s from Jamaica. And met my dad here, and they had me. Very long, convoluted story that I won't get into. And needless to say, I was raised by a single mom. And I think being raised by a single mother is something that I think transforms how you kind of look at the world. And it's very much so like one of those things that I'm still learning, like how it's kind of shaped my view of everything. And it's in the little things. It's like when I think about kids, I don't think I need to have somebody with me to have a kid most of the time. But it's also in the larger scale of things of like I'm very independent, and I think that when I was applying to colleges and all of that, I didn't really worry too much about like, am I going to have like a bunch of support nearby? Because one, my mom's always there, and if I needed to call her, she's there for me. But two, like as in being raised by a single mother, you make do with what you have. And so yeah, and I grew up in a really small town, very white town, and it shapes how I view myself in the Black community more so than in the white community, I think. And it's because sometimes in Black spaces, especially at Duke, which has a lot of liberal folk and a lot of people that are wanting to kind of change things for the better, you kind of have to play both sides of like, I grew up with these people, I know them in and out, and but at the same time, like I am a part of the Black community. My skin color is not going to change. How people view me is not going to change because of where I grew up. So yeah, I think that shaped a lot. I don't know, that was kind of rambling.
No, that was all really good. And I think my follow-up question to that is, did you find that growing up in a single parent household that Was your mom able to support you through the college application process, or did you have to rely on other people, other mentors, maybe counselors at school? Because I've talked to other students, and I don't want to generalize, but I guess I want to see if you have any advice. I guess this is what I'm getting at. If you have any advice for those students who are out there who have parents that care about them and have parents who are supportive, but sometimes they're just busy doing work and like trying to provide and stuff. But it's like hard to also help your kid with such a demanding process. And like, do you have any advice or wisdom to share from your experiences?
So basically when I was applying to colleges, my mom just said to me, she was like, Katie, apply to whatever school you want, whatever schools you want. She had set aside some money for me to apply to those schools. And um, as soon as I basically, when I was growing up and realized that like I had the potential to like go to one of these top schools, my mom started saving money. Um, and so she just said, don't think about that while you're picking your schools. We'll figure it out. And so I'm very fortunate in that case. But also, she has been one of the most supportive parents ever, because as soon as I said like I wanted to apply to some of these schools like Stanford and Duke, Yale, like all of those, she like took to YouTube, looked up every single YouTube video there is on the internet, would send me, she would watch them like all of them through and through. And then she would send me the ones that she thought were like actually helpful. And um, I give her crap sometimes because I'm like, why did you send me so many of these videos? And like my friends and I joke about like, oh, like I can set my mom on you if you want to like learn something about the GRE. My mom will find it for you. So in that case, I don't so relate to like, I relate to having a parent who means well and sometimes doesn't know the best, because the American college system, I will say, like my mom and I reflect back on it now, and we were kind of deluded. And I went to a conference this year, and they had I went this weekend actually, and they had a speaker who said, I went through life deluded, and I want to encourage you to be more deluded. And I I think being deluded sometimes helps because you don't know like what's on the other side of it all. Because we just thought like if you try hard enough, you get good grades, like, and you take the SAT, get a decent score, like it's all set. You'll get into these schools, right? Which is not the case, as most of you probably know. And I was fortunate enough to get into these schools. But like going back to the question of like how do you find people that aren't that to support you when your parents can't. um your guidance counselor, for one. I made friends with my guidance counselor my junior year because they have to write you a letter of recommendation. And man, I went into that lady's office like once a week and just bothered her and like forced her to get to know me, because I was like, I need a good letter of recommendation from you. So just we can have a conversation about anything. Like we would talk about her daughter watching Frozen and like how the second one was scarier and whatnot. And so I just think like going out of your way to get to know teachers like is really helpful. Um, in that case, especially if you have a supportive parent, that's great. And but you're still going to need those teachers. So get to know them and be annoying. Just go into their office, force them to get to know you. Yeah.
For people who can relate to you in terms of being introverted and maybe find it a little bit harder to go and like seek out support in that way and go and bother somebody or be in their face or be that squeaky wheel, how do you feel like you overcame maybe a mental barrier of like, oh, like I don't want to impose, but like I know I need to do this? How would you advise somebody in that situation?
Yeah, I definitely overthink things a lot. Like as someone who's like very conscious of like being in someone's space, and someone being in my space. I'll find myself writing an email to someone and being like, I'm so sorry and thank you so much. And it's like, it's very overkill sometimes. But I think as one of the things that I learned early on is separating, well, three things as an introvert and just in networking in general, I think anyone can relate to is one, separate your professional goals from your personal life. Like they are very much kind of like they're intertwined for sure, but one cannot hinder the other. And so when I think about like what I want to do for the future and who I need to talk to, like I don't want the fact that I have to go sleep 3 hours after I have to go sleep or take a nap after I have these conversations because it stressed me out so much. Like that doesn't matter. What matters is that I get the conversation done, right? Um, Two, like most of when you do cold emailing or like most of the thing or LinkedIn or something like that, most of those people you will never run into. So if they don't answer you, or if the 1% chance they send back something rude, like you will never see them. Trust me. Like I have sent emails and like I've never seen this person again. Like, so just trust in that and say, to heck with it. I'm gonna shoot my shot. And if it works out, then that's a great opportunity. If it doesn't, then it was a good shot and it gave you the experience to reach out to somebody. And the third thing is just like I don't call it like a game networking. We talked a lot this summer in my summer program about it, and networking is just talking to people. It's not like some sort of game. It's not some sort of like I need you to be my stepping stool. All relationships are transactional, even friendships. Like me and Mackenzie are friends, and at the end of the day, like one of us is going to ask the other to do something for them, and we'll do so because we're friends, right? But like when you think about networking, you put this idea of transactional. But if you think of friendships, they're also transactional. Relationships are transactional. And so just think of it as like you're trying to form a relationship with a person rather than using like networking as like some sort of harmful word, is what I would say.
Yeah, I like that point that you bring up about networks just being building relationships. I think so often people, at least in the spaces that we're a part of, high achieving spaces where there's this pressure to network, so often there are people that I know who go into maybe a professor's office or a dean's office or whatever the case is, a counselor's office, and they're so busy trying to shove their resume down this person's throat and be like, these are all the great things about me. Allow it to come out naturally. Like allow that stuff to flow. If you click with that person, naturally they're going to ask you questions and ask them questions too. Like don't be a selfish person who's just like, I don't care about any. I mean, Kaitlyn just mentioned she was talking to her counselor about her daughter watching Frozen, right? Like that's not Kaitlyn just being in that interview or in that conversation all about herself, right? So I think that that's a valuable thing that you bring up about just building a natural organic relationship. And when you form that closeness with somebody, um, it's only going to be natural that that person is going to want to do something for you, or you do something for them. um the next thing I want to transition into a little bit is, I guess, your experience in college, because I know you're not first gen, but you are first gen, I guess, in the American college system. And I am curious about how, like, do you feel like you've kind of had to start from scratch in that way of like your mom's experience in Jamaica was not like your experience at Duke and a PWI and all of that. So how do you feel like it's been for you, honestly, being a trailblazer in a really new space and having not necessarily being able to rely on direct experiences that your mom has had because she hasn't done exactly what you're doing. Does that make sense? What I'm asking?
Yeah. Well, to clarify, my mom went to college here. She did, but
She
she
did.
went to yeah. She went to night school here though. She didn't have traditional college experience. So she worked full time while she was going to school. In fact, she worked 3 jobs to pay for it. Which I think is like not an unusual experience for like people like me that are first gen immigrants of parents like that. Um, where, they may have went to college here, but they don't know the system. Like my mom likes to tell me the story of she applied to a master's and an MBA, and got into UPenn Wharton. And she was like, what the hell is this college? Like, I don't know what this is. So she rejected it, and continued at Rutgers because she had no idea like how that would change her career. So like I, one of the things is just I like to say my mom and I learn together. So when I find out something cool or like something interesting, um, I'll tell my mom, and she's all about giving back. And so she takes on one student from Jamaica every year where she pays for them through their schooling, and will help them like pay for like SAT scores or like help them try and transfer up here to the US. So, and half of the time I get annoyed sometimes because my mom, I'll get like a text from some random number and it will be like, hey, Katie. And I'll be like, it was my mom.
Because nobody else is calling you Katie except for your mom.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm like, whenever I get that text, I know it was my mom talking to some random coworker about me and offered my assistance to help their kid in some fashion. Like this summer, she's like, can you send these kids like these summer opportunities that you did in high school? I'm like, yeah, sure. So yeah, I think navigating the space is very interesting in that a lot of times like you kind of feel like you don't fit in with you have Duke has the life office, low income first gen immigration, and I don't really fit into that office space. And then but I don't fit into like this generational like Duke very privileged point of view that people have. Um and it's hard to kind of fit in that way at Duke and many other PWIs of like even like HBCUs. Sometimes it's like they have people that have been going there since the HBCU has been established, and that's not something that people that have immigrated here have experienced. And so yeah, I think just learning together and taking it one step at a time and finding people that look like you who have the same experiences. Like our friend Jess is in much of the same boat as I am of her family, like being first gen immigrants. And so yeah, I think just finding people in these spaces that look at you and make you feel seen, is really important. And I really discovered that this summer in a diversity program that I had no high expectations of, because not that I don't value diversity, but diversity programs sometimes mean well, but they kind of put you down in a way of like making you feel like, okay, you need something in order for you to succeed. But these people just uplift you, and like I've never felt such love and support from a program in my life.
What do you feel like are some of the other ways at Duke? And I know what you're going to say, but I want you to share this with our listeners. What are some of the ways at Duke that you have intentionally pursued community, whether that's BSA, whether that's SOCA? Just talk a little bit about that process for you and how that's been meaningful, um, to just like your discovery of your identity and willingness to take up space and all of that.
Yeah, when I got here, like I said, I'm a biology and global health major. I'm not pre-med though, shocker. And I have never wanted to be pre-med really. Like I've those considerations uh stopped during like my freshman sophomore year of high school. Um, and I came in and we came in during COVID, and they had these like online info sessions for a bunch of clubs. And I went in and there was this one called Spire Fellows. And I talked to this lady, Jenny Wood Crowley, who is one of the sweetest people ever. And this girl, Annabelle, who has since graduated, I think like 2 or 3 years ago. And they were just like so pumped about this program, which was for STEM students who are from a background that is typically not supported in the fields. And that's very broad range, which I liked. Like it's like LGBTQ, women, people from ethnic backgrounds, racial backgrounds, anything really. And I was like, they were just so psyched to like hear me as a bio major say, I don't want to be pre-med, and this is like sounds perfect for me. Um, and I was really psyched to join them. So I joined that club. It was a fellowship, and I met one of our blockmates, Sarah, through it, and another one of our friends, Major, and that community was kind of my saving grace during my freshman year. I was one of those kids because it was during COVID, so you were sitting in your single room. You weren't really allowed to eat with people or do anything like that. And I was a rule stickler. So I was just like, okay, I guess I'll just sit here. I had some classes in person. I was fortunate enough to be able to go to those. But I was very lonely, and there would be times where I would be like sitting in my room for like a week, having like just been eating ramen and like just living like that. And my only saving grace was Spire Fellows, basically, because every Friday they would have a grab and go, and I would bring a board game and just play with the two like deans that were in charge of it. And I looked forward to it. I looked forward to it every single week. And so that's like one of the places that I found community in a very unexpected way. And so now I'm looking at colleges to apply for graduate school, and I'm looking for those same sort of communities, and seeing what they offer. And then as well as like, yeah, I've gone to a few SOCA events, which is Students of Caribbean Association. And in a way, I found like happiness in that, but also sometimes not fitting in that space either, because I didn't grow up in the Caribbean. And I know about it. My mom's from there, like my dad's from there, but a lot of the students that are at the heads of it are, born and raised there. They speak Patois, like, which is like a Jamaican dialect. So yeah, sometimes it's difficult. And then I think, yeah, just uplifting minorities in terms. So with Spire Fellows, I served as president last year, and we had new leadership. And what I really wanted to do was make Spire Fellows accessible to all people. We only take 20 people. And I felt like there wasn't space for people like me, that looked like me and want to pursue science on campus. And it's really unfortunate that we only take 20. And because it's so diverse, right? We don't get like a lot of bio majors that don't want to do pre-med. There's comp sci majors, there's engineering, there's women, there's like a lot of people that we're missing. And I have tried to do workshops and stuff that open up, and I actually worked with Jessica Harrell on taking a group of STEM students to Abracams, which is like this huge undergrad conference for minority students. Same broad definition as ours, and we're taking 20, and we'll pay for them to go to like Phoenix, Arizona, and present their awesome research. So I'm really excited about that. And I think what I can say to people is there is definitely a space on campus for you. You just got to find it. If that's just looking up diversity programs, insert school name here, and like just search for them. Ask. So those are the types of questions that colleges want to be asked, right? Like I always found it difficult to like, what do I ask an admissions officer that can't be found online? Like the truth is a lot of things can be found online, but you might not know how to Google for it. And so this is one of those questions, like, what are some organizations that you have for me, for people who look like me, that I can look into joining, is what I'll say.
Yeah, I think that was really informative, and for me something that stood out is that you were able to find community in a space where what I guess bonded you to some of those other people was not necessarily the way that you look, but also just like the interest that you guys have, and like coming from a marginalized, less represented background. That could be women, that could be a person of color, that could be etc. Insert the identity marker. And I know so many people get caught up in like, does finding community only have to mean like finding people who looks like me? It doesn't. Like that is, it is so broad, and can literally be anything in any way that you can relate to somebody else. So I'm really glad that you spotlighted that. And I think something else that I just like want to highlight about you is um, just the ways that you have like pursued leadership in a way that's like meant to give back to other people. I find that that's just like really admirable. And it's not just like with your mom sending you, you know, people from her job or her coworkers' kids, but it's also the work that you're doing with your Spire community and the work that you did as the president, and you know, you constantly wanting to create space for other people. So I think that that's also something that people can learn from you as well, of just what it means to be a good human, you know, and just like have a heart for others. I'm serious. I'm serious. I see you laughing. But in a less on a less sappy note, something that I want to ask you about is, you kind of touched on this idea of how in STEM courses specifically, and also you being in bio and global health, but not on the pre-med track, you probably don't see a lot of other students outside of the Spire community doing kind of the same things, that are literally like people of color, look like you, same background, whatever. Have you struggled at all with like imposter syndrome or self-doubt, or what have been some hurdles, both internal but also maybe um, externally placed on you, that have been something that you've had to wrestle with, and like how do you feel like you've overcome that in those spaces?
Yeah, I think coming into college, like when you come from high school and like you get good grades and stuff like that, you're like, I can do this all on my own. Um, and I one of the things that Spire Fellows tries to like be into you is like, you should get a tutor. If you not just if you need one, but like if you think you might need one, or like, because they pay for it, like you should just use the resource if you have it. um and it's one of the things that I really struggled with, because I was like, I was the tutor in high school, like I was the tutor in middle school, like I have never really been tutored in that way for a class. And I still struggle to this day to like get over my own head of like this idea that having a tutor kind of makes you less than in some case. Um, and that's one of the things that I've struggled with. In terms of imposter syndrome, I think everyone struggles with imposter syndrome in some fashion. Um, I imposter syndrome to me has never been like a not like a huge hurdle. Like it's, you get those like little thoughts when you hear someone, when you're first at Duke and you're like, people talk about what they did in high school and you're like, oh my gosh, this person went to ISEF, which is like one of the biggest um conferences in the world for inventions and stuff, and they like won a prize there, and I'm like, wow. Or I was helping someone with Longfellow's application, and they said that they're CEO at their own company and have like 40 employees who are actual like full-fledged adults. And I was like, I couldn't imagine doing that in high school. And I say this to people now that are applying, that like, you guys did far more than I did in high school. And the competition is far harder to get into now. And I'm just impressed by what people do. Like, I'm at the summer program and they have a high school student program and they're doing some of the same research that I am, and it's amazing. Um, and like at the same time, it's amazing, but at the same time, you're like, man, what am I doing with my life if this kid's already doing what I'm doing? Um, and so in that fashion, yeah, I think I've struggled with imposter syndrome. But one of the things that I do to deal with it is, one, just having good people in your life. Like, I think you are your own worst enemy. I know I could call up any one of my blockmates and be like, hey, like, I am struggling right now. Like, can you help me out? Like, or like, I've called up Sarah, my roommate, and one of our blockmates, like crying on the bathroom floor, and just literally asked her to tell me about her day and then tell me something good. And she's done it, like, no problem. And so that kind of level of support is what you need to get through college, quite frankly. I the conference that I went to, they had this speaker and she said she went to do her PhD and they failed her qualifying exam, which is like an exam you take 2 years in so you can officially become a PhD candidate. And she failed it because no one would study with her because she was Black. And no one wanted to, and her professors didn't like her because of the way she looked. She didn't give up, and she found her people. She found a group of like other Black PhD students who weren't even in her cohort, who weren't even in the same field that she was in, but they would just all study together, uplift each other, celebrate, cry. Um, and it got her through her PhD. And she got her PhD. She is thriving now. She got her PhD in psychology, but she's now like the head of a physics program, and gets to do like uplift minority students, and that's like amazing to hear. But it just shows you how much community is really important. And having and like I struggle with community and finding that. And if you're listening and like watching this and you're like, how do I, like, I don't have that community, how do I make it? Like, put yourself out there, join a club, join a fellowship, join something small. If you join something small, I promise you will make one friend. Like, you just need to, we go after all of these big clubs that have tons of people in them, and they're not helpful. They're not helpful like one bit, because you are like a fish in a giant sea. You will get lost. And so I just want to say, like, just go for a small club that's meaningful to you, and you will be fine, and you will find your people, make friends, study with people in class, all of that.
Yeah, I really resonate with a lot of that in terms of just having people around you who can pull you out of your own head. You know, I struggle with a lot of intrusive thoughts and just like, oh, like comparing myself to other people. And Kaitlyn knows, like, this past semester during our junior spring, where it's this mad dash to get in all your applications to apply for summer internships and all of that. Like, I just felt so behind the eight ball. And I would be like in our like in Sarah and Kaitlyn's room being like, y'all, I just feel like a lazy bum. Like, I feel like I'm so behind. Like, I just feel like I'm not, like, this is just, I was just so in my head about comparing myself to other people and just feeling like I was just this procrastinator and this person that's not going to get anything. And like my blockmates and the people that care about me would just be like, Mackenzie, you're literally overreacting. Like, you have time. Just like put some applications out there, start small, one step at a time, and would check in with me and hold me accountable and be like, hey, like, how's it going? You know? And so when you have that support system to kind of destabilize some of those illogical thoughts in your head and remind you of what's true and remind you that things are okay. And like Kaitlyn said, when she was sitting on the bathroom floor, remind you of what's good. Those are going to be the moments that allow you to thrive and succeed and overcome and surmount those obstacles. So with our last couple of minutes, I want to ask you, Kaitlyn, you're going into your senior year. So kind of, I think this is like fun because we're like some of our audience members are going to be going into people who are going into their first year of college. So if you had to say something to your younger, you knew I was going there with this. You were like, I already saw you the gears start turning. If you had to say something to younger Kaitlyn, aka the person that represents this incoming group of freshmen, what advice do you give them looking back 3 years ago?
It's funny because this is a hard question. Because I work with freshmen. I serve on orientation committee at Duke. And I'm going back to Duke in a couple of days, in like a week actually, to go say hey to freshmen and say this advice that I'm supposed to give. And the advice that I'd give to incoming freshmen is one, don't take it too seriously. You're here, you're at the college that you're supposed to be at, right? Those first couple of months are really hard because you are going to be doubting your choice in colleges, in just life in general for like a month. And that's just part of the process because you will never know what would have happened if you made that other choice. The other thing is when you are starting to doubt that, just take a deep breath and realize that like you have 3 more years here. And like you are going to be okay. College is a space like whenever you are down and like there are so many ups and downs in college, you learn yourself like the back of your hand in college because it's the first time you have time maybe to think to yourself because like you're alone and maybe you have a ton of siblings and you've never been alone in your life, or maybe you've always been busy with activities. In college you actually have to study for stuff now. Like you have to realize that that reflection and those ups and downs are going to make you into a better person coming out of it, and just keep going. It's like I on Teen Wolf they have this scene and it's like I feel like I'm drowning, and the guidance counselor goes like, just keep swimming, because eventually like your body will never allow you to drown, and you yourself and your friends that surround you will never allow you to drown. And so just keep swimming and it will get better. Like maybe it will take until the end of the semester when you have a break, or maybe it's just a bad week. Like it will get better and everything will be fine. And so that's the advice that I give to freshmen, because it can seem like nothing is going to get better in the dark parts, but just remember, just keep swimming and you'll be okay, and have fun. Like these are supposed to be the best 4 years in your life. In our case, best 3 years because COVID, I don't really count, but these are supposed to be really good years, and I promise you they will be.
And that's so encouraging. And just like, I don't know why I'm just like getting emotional over here. Like, I'm like, shoot, some of those things I even need to hear, even 4 years or 3 years later from my freshman year, just like, just keep swimming, Because I get so caught up in, I feel like I'm drowning. I feel like I'm going under. I feel like I'm sinking, but like, you know how to swim, And so I really appreciate you sharing that. And I think something that I just want to like acknowledge is I know you mentioned at the beginning of this, and this is something that I already know about you, that sometimes it takes a little bit of an extra push for you to feel comfortable taking up space. And, feel comfortable reaching out to somebody and being like, hey, I want to meet with you, or hey, I want to advocate for myself. But one of, I don't know if you know this or know that this is how I feel, but like you genuinely are one of my favorite people to talk to, because that adjective that you used of just like pensive and thoughtful is so incredibly accurate. And I want you, just like the listeners watching, I want them also to remember that you have so much like wisdom and important things that you're saying. And like I'm hopefully it means something coming from me, but like I'm validating that like everything that comes out of your mouth is so meaningful and so important, and like something that anybody else in your surrounding vicinity can learn from. And so I want you, especially going into your senior year, as we close out this chapter of college, which is crazy, to continue taking advantage of those opportunities to speak and to like have your voice be heard. And I'm so happy that I got the honor of being able to like uplift your voice on this interview, because I know that just as it was inspiring for me, somebody who gets to like see you very often during the school year, I know it's going to be inspiring for listeners as well. So thank you, Kaitlyn, for taking the time to share and to impart wisdom and to be present with us. And yeah, I hope everybody else is able to learn some information from you as well.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.